Good morning. It's me, your favorite farmer from Illinois. Well, of course, unless you're a farmer or your family farms. You know what, just completely disregard that point. As long as I'm honorable mention, I'm happy with that. You wouldn't guess by the sunshine and the birds chirping that today will be our last day of field work before Winter 2.0. We've got snow in the forecast tomorrow and freezing temperatures. I'm not looking forward to it, and I don't think any of our crops are. I'm not sure yet what magnitude of tillage and planting we're going to get ourselves into. As you've seen in the last few episodes, ground conditions are a little bit wet. We have a very small percentage of our farms left to go, but they are also our wettest fields. We're going to run over and do some scouting. We want to be careful though, with this weather coming up, there's no reason to get into a hurry. I know that it's very possible if we get some rain, get some snow, it may not be dry until May. We're already here close to the 20th of April. Actually, it's the 19th of April. And I am a big believer in getting your beans planted. I would like to avoid planting them in nasty conditions, especially ahead of some bad weather. So we're gonna go scout out a few of our fields that are somewhat close to being plantable. We'll get a better idea of what we're going to do today. Before we take off though, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy what you're seeing. Let's go get to work. One of our fields is tucked back in here. Get out of here, geese. Oh, they're fighting each other. This field is appropriately named north of the pond because of the pond. This farm has some very light timber soil. We ran the field cultivator out here 2 days ago to kind of break open that crust, air it out a little bit. There is moisture back on top that probably came up overnight. If we were going to plant this today, we would need to let the sun and the wind and the warm temperatures dry it out a little bit. Then maybe around 11 o'clock or noon today, we'd come back out here with the field cultivator a second time, work it about 1 inch to 1.5 inches deep, chop down all the clods that are left on top, level out these tracks. Dad's been out here 20 times to see if it's ready to plant. That would dry it out, and I think it would leave us with a pretty good seed bed. You can tell it is pretty wet in there. Does roll up into a ball pretty easy. Regardless, we won't be able to work this or plant this without it drying out a little bit. It's going to be really damp over there by the tree line. There's a few draws through the field that I've almost buried the auger wagon in multiple years. I don't know if we should plant this. It's hard to say. As I said in the last episode, the closer you get to the bad weather, the less chance your soybeans that you plant have to survive. Okay, that may be a little bit dramatic. A lot of them will struggle to emerge. Maybe 75 to 80% of the field will have no problem at all, but that other 20% will not look good. If the conditions do cause those obstacles for the soybeans, you'll be out here replanting 20% of the field. You kind of have to weigh the pros and cons. Do you want to get your soybeans planted and have 80% of them good and 20% of them have to be replanted? Or do we wait, roll a dice, maybe get out here in 7 to 10 days at the earliest and plant the soybeans? 70 degrees, they'll come right up. That's kind of the decision we're trying to make right now. It's hard to say what's the right call because we could plant them now with no issues, but you don't know. We don't have a crystal ball to see exactly what the future holds. Remember folks, light ground like this is very forgiving to tillage. We could work this 10 times and not suffer any yield effects this year. However, it is not forgiving to seed placement and seed timing. We've got so much of our soybean crop already in the ground, I'm kind of leaning towards actually taking my foot off the accelerator here and not planting these beans. This farm will not dry out anyways until it warms back up. Based on that logic alone, the soybeans will not be growing either till it warms up. So by the time the soybeans are growing, we'll be back out here planting, I hope. I think I'm going to just defer from planting these. Making farming decisions is so hard because the time between making the decision and seeing the final results of that decision is 6 to 7 months. I know that there may be replanting here in the next few weeks if we were unsuccessful, but that could be better than planting them later. We won't have a final set of data on that till harvest time. There's no way of quantifying what was right and wrong till the combines roll through the field. Unfortunately, our data cycle is yearly. Not every couple weeks we have new results. Just not the way it works out here. This is the farm that we planted the south half of yesterday. I think that it would be a little bit more forgiving than the one across the road that we just looked at. I don't know that I really want to plant this, but I believe it would be the better choice than the one by the pond. It's still a very light soil, but it is darker compared to the other farm. It's got a slope to it. Water really doesn't sit anywhere except for the terrace bottoms, and then that spot right there. I think this would be in better shape in a couple hours without working it twice than the other one would after 5 hours and another pass with the field cultivator. So I guess if we're going to decide to plant a farm, we'll come back out here. We may have to drive around the mud holes. We've already got half the farm planted. We've got the same beans on the planter. It's probably the easier choice. Ground's not in bad shape at all. It needs a few hours to dry out. The wind's picked up, high of 66 degrees, sunny, be in good shape here by noon. Just driving around, farmer stuff. The idea of planting today doesn't exactly sell itself when you look at how muddy and messy and problematic your planter is from the last few days. We've cleaned up some of the evils, got the excess mud off, cleaned out some of the plug true V openers, and I'm cleaning my windows. Multiple birds with one stone. When you run through some really wet ground, you can get mud wedged in these true V openers. They're supposed to spin lightly, and once they get packed full of mud, they'll stop spinning. I'm not gonna grab them too much because they're sharp from running through the ground. I'll cut my hand. This one's unplugged, and we've unplugged most of them, but man, they're a real pain to get unplugged if you get stuff in them. You can barely tell there's a hydraulic blow through here. No grime or oil or anything. None at all. There is some kind of twisted irony in the fact that I'm wearing a t-shirt already first thing in the morning, and tomorrow I'm going to need my winter jacket. What's up with that? Something I've mentioned a few times that we like to keep in mind with planting our crops ahead of wet weather or cold weather is that you want to allow a minimum threshold of time before that weather sets in. For soybeans, it's about 24 hours you need them in the ground for them to be relatively safe from all that cold water that comes in with the cool weather. For corn, the time frame's a little bit longer. 2 to 3 days is kind of what you need before that cold water infiltrates the soil. This effect, which I've described multiple times, is cold water imbibition. If the seeds imbibe freezing cold water right after a rain when it's nice and cool outside, it can severely damage the germination potential and vigor of those little tiny seedlings. What we've kind of decided to do today is kind of take it easy. We're going to plant out the rest of the XtendFlex beans we have in the planter. They're going to go back up there to the north where we came from yesterday. Then once that's empty, we're going to take everything home. I'm going to grease the planter and we're going to shut down for the day. With the amount of soybean acres we already have in the ground and the remaining being lighter, less productive soil, we're just gonna wait and see how the weather unfolds. I don't think planting today is the worst idea. I also don't think waiting is a bad idea. So this time around, we're not gonna try and test Mother Nature. We're just gonna roll with the punches. We'll kill some time by doing what us farmers know how to do best, and that is drive around. It's a beautiful day out. It's almost a shame that we're not planting very much. One thing that's always kind of perplexed me about other farmers, and I mean this as kindly as possible, some of these people are out here planting today that didn't have a single seed in the ground 10 days ago. I guess when the ground was perfectly dry, working up extremely well, it was too early to plant. But now it's going to snow tomorrow, going to be below freezing 2 days in a row, and then wet after that. All these people are gung-ho to put their corn and soybeans in the ground. I just don't understand the logic. And it's typically the same thing year after year. I understand that if you don't think conditions are right, you shouldn't be planting. And that's fine. It's your farm. It's your decision to make. And realistically, that's a perfectly good line of logic. Some people differ on what they think are optimal conditions. We can argue about that all day. If you thought last week was bad, but this week is good, well, no, that doesn't make any sense. Comparatively speaking, we were running full steam ahead last week, and this week we're kind of letting off the accelerator because of the upcoming weather. I chalk this up to what I refer to as the calendar effect. In early April, people really aren't that ambitious. They're thinking it's too early, it's too cold, it's too wet, and that's fine. Then you get to mid to late April, and they're kind of like, okay, well, maybe we should do something. And then they get to May, June, they're like, oh my gosh, we gotta plant something, get all the planters out, hell, put it in the Terragator, let's just spread our beans on the ground. I guess I just wish people were more consistent with their judgment. That's just me rambling. You do what you want. It's your farm. You've got the keys to your kingdom. I'm just gonna sit here and watch. I found something useful to do, and that is mow my overgrown yard. Sometimes when we start planting in the spring, I get a little bit behind. I also am going out of my comfort zone, and I got a battery-powered weed eater. We'll see how it goes. Time for the maiden voyage. I put this battery on their fast charging system that came with this pack, and it's already charged, or close to charged, I don't know. All 4 of them are lighting up red. That's pretty quick. This thing's pretty slick. You do your weed eating, then you can hook up an edger. I weed eated my whole yard, and I have 3/4 of a battery left, which is pretty impressive. I've got my first Milwaukee battery, DeWalt. You better be scared. Now I don't have any reason not to try out some Milwaukee tools. Maybe a 1-inch impact, that'd be pretty neat. I typically do my best on this channel not to stick my foot in my mouth, so I better limber up. Because not only are we going to plant one of those farms, we're planting both of them. This does not negate any of the points I mentioned earlier. It is a risk, But farming, much like life, is a gamble. We're gonna roll the dice here, put the seeds in the ground, and hopefully it works out in our benefit. Besides, if you think we're good at planting, you should see how good we are at replanting. We're gonna load these 38XF1 Extend Flex beans in the planter and go put them in the mud, I guess. From all that hydraulic oil, a working hazard. A quick moment of silence for these seeds. They're gonna need all the luck they can get. Let's go plant some beans. Pretty obvious where we had that hydraulic line blow. Right next to all the other oil wells. Giving back to the earth what was taken away once years ago. I got my phone in the seed tender and Dad brought it to me. Would have been doing me a favor by not bringing it. Let's try and not make a mess this afternoon. This ground's actually in pretty good shape now. Essentially, we're just gonna pick up where we left off. These are the inrows I did yesterday ahead of the rain, thinking that I was gonna get rained out. I could have gone ahead and do the whole field. I'll just put the planter down right here and start planting. After, of course, I prime the row units. This farm's got a nice, pretty roll to it. And we're right next to Interstate 57. Wave if you see me. A little moist right there. Probably ought to plant around it. That terrace will be wet in the middle of July, unless, of course, it stops raining. There's an interesting number of spots on this farm so far that I've planted around. There's another one right there. I don't know why I even plant through this spot. It's the remainder of an old salt pit from an oil well tank, and it's full of salt, so nothing's gonna grow out here unless we reclaim it with some gypsum or something. One day, maybe one of these soybean plants will make it out through there. Probably not gonna be this year. I'd almost be willing to bet a lot of money that nothing grows in that spot. Why do you guys always run those over? That's a big one too. Let's sit on it, that usually works. Perfect. I don't quite understand why there's always water there. Terrace probably needs dug out. It should be draining from there to the inlet. You think those ones will grow? Never know. There's always a route. Took the longest route possible. Looks like a good spot for it. Check another field off the list, or at least like 98.9% of the field. There's a few wet holes I had to go around. Now we're gonna go load some 3/8 Pioneer and List soybeans. It'll be the last field of the day, and I hope God treats them well, because they've got a lot to do. Not a very good look for planting conditions when you leave the field with mud coming off of your tires. Probably got a little too close to some of the spots I planted. We jumped to the other side of the interstate, headed back to plant north of the pond. Collecting sticks. Not today, buddy. Oh, I got a closing wheel rubber coming off. Not that big of a deal. Not going to stop us for now. Probably a 20-minute project to fix that. If they're going to struggle out here, we might as well at least make sure they're comfortable. So when you know you're planting them shallow, you got one on top of the ground. It's about 1.5 inches into loose soil, which is a lot deeper than I have it set to. I did it twice with the field cultivator, so it's basically a powder. Given the circumstances, I'm not actually too disappointed with how that worked up. That light ground loves the field cultivator. The soybeans in row 29 are protesting being planted. And by protesting, I mean they're not planting at all, so we gotta see what's up. Got these. Got a chunk of mud in there somehow. Huh. That it? What a strange place for that mud to stay. I say I got a chunk of mud in there somehow. I know exactly where that mud came from. The last field we were at. That was a wet hole all across. I had a very good question in the comments of one of the previous videos about the difference between a through and a round in terms of farming movement terminology. And that is a great question. A through is one shot through the field, as the name implies. It is just a pass from point A to point B. A round is a down and back. It is one time around the field. So it is from point A to point B, back to point A. So a round is 2 throughs. I know that's not very important information, but it could confuse some of you when I say I've got 5 passes or 5 throughs in the field after I've got 5 rounds. They are a different amount of measurement. All right, everyone, we're jumping forward a little bit. We finished up that field, no issues at all, didn't run out of any seed. What a perfect ending to what is going to be a good break point. We've got snow, cold weather coming in the forecast tomorrow and the next few days. As I said, I'm not worried that we're gonna have any negative impact on the crops we already have planted. It is something we are going to have to keep an eye on. In preparation for all that miserable weather, we've unhooked our field cultivators, we pulled our 4-wheel drive tractors in the barn. We like to treat our equipment to all the luxuries. they live a posh life. My soybean planter tractor is up at the fuel barrel. We're topping it off right now. I'm actually thoroughly surprised at how many different farmers I saw out and about today planting both corn and soybeans. They must be equally confident in their seed, and I think that's not a bad choice. I'll keep you guys posted on what the weather does. As for us though, that's going to be the end of the episode. I appreciate you tuning in. Like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and comment down below if you have any questions. You know I love to talk about farming. Have a great day, everyone. Peace.